And I think this has already been touched upon, I do believe that Russia, Vladimir Putin in particular's efforts around the world are very important, but the biggest issue of our time, in my view, and I think in the view of most of the members of this committee, and I would venture to guess most of the members of this panel, is China and the risks they pose. I'm not sure in the 240 some odd year history of this nation we've ever faced a competitor and potential adversary of this scale, scope, and capacity. It is my personal view, and it's shared by many people, that they are carrying out a well-orchestrated, well-executed, very patient, long-term strategy to replace the United States as the most powerful and influential nation on earth. Just to kind of highlight the different ways and untraditional ways in which they're pursuing this plan, Director Wray, let me ask you, what in your view could you say in this setting is the counterintelligence risk posed to U.S. national security from Chinese students, particularly those in advanced programs in the sciences and mathematics?
I think in this setting, I would just say that the use of non-traditional collectors, especially in the academic setting, whether it's professors, scientists, students, we see in almost every field office that the FBI has around the country. It's not just in major cities; it's in small ones as well. It's across basically every discipline, and I think the level of naivete on the part of the academic sector about this creates its own issues. They're exploiting the very open research and development environment that we have, which we all revere, but they're taking advantage of it. So one of the things we're trying to do is view the China threat as not just a whole of government threat, but a whole of society threat on their end. And I think it's going to take a whole of society response by us. So it's not just the intelligence community, but it's raising awareness within our academic sector, within our private sector as part of the defense.
Well,
Hey everybody, this is Deb with Truthification Chronicles, and we're going to talk about China. But before we do that, I've got a couple of other links I want to show you. And the first one is this. You know, I'm from Indiana, so I had to put this up. 3 Muncie police officers indicted for using excessive force and attempting to cover it up. So, yeah, this just happened. A grand jury in Indianapolis returned a 12-count indictment against 2 officers and 1 sergeant. And, yeah, they are going to likely be spending some time in jail. We'll see. Obviously, it's just an indictment, which doesn't mean that they're necessarily going to be found guilty. But this one had 9 felony offenses. This one had 1 felony offense. And this guy had 2 felony offenses. So, yeah, they pretty much, as I understand it, used force that resulted in bodily injury against someone. So, not a good thing, right? Stomping on and delivering knee strikes to the arrestee's head. Yeah, not a good idea. Don't know what the guy did, but wow, that's pretty excessive. So, thought I'd, just mention that. As always, all the links will be down below, and you can read the full thing for yourself. Now, I also did not put this in last time. In my last video, I had the tab open and everything. I just didn't get it in the lineup, and so I forgot. But here we go. This is, the journalist that was turned away from the White House because of the fever that we talked about. Well, guess what? He was from this outlet that is an English language channel that is what? Chinese owned. Yeah. Very interesting. So I'll leave the link to that down below if you want to see it. Anyway, let's get started on this because there's a lot going on. And I really want to thank Paula, and I think her last name's Sonier or Sonier, whichever way it's pronounced. But I really want to thank her for, here's her name up here. I want to thank her for giving me the name of the guy. I had heard about this, but I didn't go look it up, and I should have, because I knew there was more to it than just what I had given you in a previous video. And in a previous video, we talked about, well, we've talked a couple times about the Chinese infiltration into our country. Well, I talked in one video about this Yang King Yi, who was a Chinese national, and she was charged in an indictment today with 1 count each of visa fraud, making false statements, acting as an agent of a foreign government, and conspiracy. And she is currently in China there. But see, the deal was, and I said this in my previous video, that they have been coming in, all these Chinese students have been coming in under the guise of being students. They get into these positions and then they take all of the secrets and the research that's been done and they claim it as their own. They take it back and they steal it. It's stealing intellectual property. And you know, President Trump has been talking about this for a long time. But after doing the research on this one, I understand why. Because it's a huge problem. And you heard the clip at the very beginning was from 2018. Actually February of 2018. And it points out, you know, just how pervasive it was then, and it still is. But there were some things going on. So let's get going and talk about this. This was this Yanking Yi went to school, I believe, at Harvard, and they covered up that she was involved with the Chinese Communist Party. And it's even more than that. Just wait until we find out. So the Department of Justice announced today, and this was back on January 28th. The Department of Justice announced today that the chair of Harvard University's Chemistry and Chemical Biology Department and 2 Chinese nationals have been charged in connection with aiding the People's Republic of China. And so this guy, Dr. Charles Lieber, 60, chair of the Department of Chemistry and Chemical Biology at Harvard University. I mean, this guy wasn't just a professor, he was the chair, was arrested this morning and charged by criminal complaint with 1 count of making a materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statement. Lieber will appear this afternoon before Magistrate Judge Marion B. Bowler in federal court in Boston, Massachusetts. And like I said, this one was already indicted with 1 count of visa fraud, and we talked about this one. And then there was this one, Cao Song-Chen, 30, a Chinese national, was arrested on December 10th at Boston's Logan International Airport and charged by criminal complaint with attempting to smuggle 21 vials of biological research to China. So see, they're not just here being students, all mild-mannered and everything. No! This is their way of getting all of this intellectual property. And, you know, you may think, oh, well, so it's some intellectual property, no big deal. No, no, no. It's much more than that. So stick with me here, folks, because there's a lot to it. And when I saw this smuggling 21 vials of biological research, so he was indicted on 1 count of smuggling goods from the United States, and he has been detained since December 30th. So, this Dr. Charles Lieber, let's get into him because according to court documents, since 2008, Dr. Lieber, who has served as the principal investigator of the Lieber Research Group at Harvard University, okay, pretty prestigious here, which specialized in the area of nanoscience, has received more than $15 million in grant funding from the National Institutes of Health. That means our tax money, okay? And Department of Defense. Again, our tax money. Okay, so this guy got $15 million in grant funding to be doing his stuff. These grants require the disclosure of significant foreign financial conflicts of interest, including financial support from foreign governments or foreign entities. Unbeknownst to Harvard University beginning in 2011, Lieber became a strategic scientist at where? Oh, yeah, Wuhan University of Technology. Woot, woot, woot. So look at the connection, man. Of all places. Where else? And what does this guy do? Yeah, he's involved in biological things. Ooh, anyway, let's go on because there's more. Okay, so he became a strategic scientist at Wuhan University in China and was a contractual participant in China's 1,000 Talents plan from in or about 2012 to 2017. Now, we talked about that. Remember? That was in the other video, too. China's 1,000 Talents Plan is one of the most prominent Chinese talent recruit plans that are designed to attract, recruit, and cultivate high-level scientific talent in furtherance of China's scientific development, economic prosperity, and national security. These talent programs seek to lure Chinese overseas talent and foreign experts to bring their knowledge and experience to China and reward individuals for stealing proprietary information. Under the terms of Lieberman's 3-year 1,000 Talents contract, WUT paid Lieber $50,000 per month. Living expenses of up to 1 million Chinese yuan, approximately $158,000 at the time, and awarded him more than 1.5 million to establish a research lab at WUT. Woohoo! Yeah. So they were doing all this. They were funding this guy to go there, and he's using our taxpayer dollars as a grant to do his research that the Chinese government was then going to get the benefit of. So essentially, we paid $15 million for him to work for the Chinese. And they're paying him. Oh, man. Oh, in return, Lieber was obligated to work for WUT, quote, not less than 9 months a year by, quote, declaring international cooperation projects, cultivating young teachers and PhD students, organizing international conferences, applying for patents, and publishing articles in the name of WUT. Yeah, this guy was out and out working for the Chinese government. The complaint alleges that in 2018 and 2019, Lieber lied about his involvement in the 1,000 Talents Plan and affiliation with WUT. On or about April 24, 2018, during an interview with investigators, Lieber stated that he was never asked to participate in the 1,000 Talents program, liar, and he wasn't sure how China categorized him as a spy. In November 2018, NIH inquired of Harvard whether Lieber had failed to disclose his then suspected relationship with WUT and China's 1,000 Talents Plan. Lieber caused Harvard to falsely tell NIH that Lieber, quote, had no formal association with WUT. After 2012, that, quote, WUT continued to falsely exaggerate his involvement with WUT in subsequent years, and that Lieber, quote, is not and never has been a participant in China's 1,000 Talents Plan. So, see, Harvard, they thought what they were saying was true. They didn't know that they were lying about it because they thought this was accurate. But it wasn't. It wasn't. And of course, this is the one that I talked about in the previous video. According to the indictment, Yi is a lieutenant of the People's Liberation Army, the PLA, the Armed Forces of the People's Republic of China, and member of the Chinese Communist Party, the CCP. On her J-1 visa application, Yi falsely identified herself as a, quote, student, and lied about her ongoing military service at the National University of Defense Technology, that's the NUDT, a top military academy directed by the Chinese Communist Party. It is further alleged that while studying at Boston University's Department of Physics, Chemistry, and Biomedical Engineering from October 2017 to April 2019, Yi continued to work as a PLA lieutenant, completing numerous assignments from PLA officers such as conducting research, assessing U.S. military websites, and sending U.S. documents and information to China. According to court documents, on April 20th, 2019, federal officers interviewed Yi at Boston's Logan International Airport. During the interview, it is alleged that Yi falsely claimed that she had minimal contact with 2 NUDT professors who were high-ranking PLA officers. However, a search of Yi's electronic devices demonstrated that at the direction of one NUDT professor, who was a PLA colonel, Yi had accessed U.S. military websites, researched U.S. military projects, and compiled information for the PLA on 2 U.S. scientists with expertise in robotics and computer science. Furthermore, a review of a WeChat conversation revealed that Yi and the other PLA officer from NUDT were collaborating on a research paper about a risk assessment model designed to decipher data for military applications. During the interview, Yi admitted that she held the rank of lieutenant in the PLA and admitted she was a member of the CCP. Because, the Communist Party's not going to send people over here unless they are sure that they're faithful to the Communist Party. So then we go on to Shaozong Zheng. In August 2018, Zheng entered the United States on a J-1 visa and conducted cancer cell research at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center in Boston from September 4th, 2018 to December 9th, 2019. It is alleged that on December 9th, 2019, Zheng stole 21 vials of biological research and attempted to smuggle them out of the United States aboard a flight destined for China. Federal officers at Logan Airport discovered the vials hidden in a sock inside of one of Zheng's bags and not properly packaged. It is alleged that initially Zheng lied to officers about the contents of his luggage, but later admitted he had stolen the vials from a lab at Beth Israel. Zheng stated that he intended to bring the vials to China to use them to conduct research in his own laboratory and publish the results under his own name. Yeah, probably not the first one that's done that. And so then it goes into the charges. I don't know. I added them all up. If they get all these people, all of the charges they have here could be 40 years, but you know how that goes. So, and then supposedly, and a fine of $250,000 each time. So, I don't know. That's what they've got. And here's all the people that were involved. Now, I want to spend a little bit of time talking about this guy right here because there's important, kind of interesting facts about him I want you to know. But before we do that, let's go down here because, so these cases, I wanted to point this out to you. These cases are part of the Department of Justice's China Initiative, which reflects the strategic priority of countering Chinese national security threats and reinforces the president's overall national security strategy. In addition to identifying and prosecuting those engaged in trade secret theft, hacking, and economic espionage, the initiative will increase efforts to protect our critical infrastructure against external threats, including foreign direct investment, supply chain threats, and the foreign agents seeking to influence the American public and policymakers without proper registration. And then if you click here, you'll find the charging documents, which is right here. It's 35 pages, but it's kind of readable because this is from the special agent, Robert Plum, and he says he's a special agent with the Federal Bureau of Investigation, have been so employed since June 2016, and you go through and you can find, it says, I support this affidavit in support of a criminal complaint charging Dr. Lieber with making materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements in a manner within the jurisdiction of the executive branch of the United States and in violation of Title 18, so forth. So, specifically based upon the evidence gathered thus far in the ongoing investigation, I have probable cause to believe and do in fact believe that Lieber made materially false, fictitious, and fraudulent statements regarding his participation in China's 1,000 Talents Plan. And then if you go through, seriously, pretty much it just lays it all out and says, this is what was going on. So remember, he was getting $50,000 a month in salary from him. Oh, man. So, yeah, that was going on. And then, like I said, I wanted to talk to you just a little bit about this China Initiative. Here's a fact sheet about it. And it was set up, the Attorney General's Initiative. Guess when this was set up and who set it up? Look at this. March 2018. It started to percolate. It hadn't been formed then. But in June 2018, the White House Office of Trade and Manufacturing Policy issued a report on how China's economic aggression threatens the technologies and intellectual property of the United States and the world. And that is a document and a half. It's really good to look at and start reading because I've got to tell you, folks, I didn't understand just how bad it was. and what all they were doing. China is a snake. Oh my gosh, they do all these different things. They have so many different tactics that it's really incredible. So the guy that was put in charge is this John C. Demers. And so I wanted to point out him. You can go through the rest of this, but I wanted to point out him because he, on November 1st of 2018, he delivers remarks regarding the economic espionage by the People's Republic of China. Now, I can't say for sure when he actually became the head of this particular China initiative. It was in November, but this statement right here was November 1st. And so I think he was probably very close to that. Jeff Sessions, if I recall correctly, resigned in November 7th, I think it was, of 2018. So, see, this was yet another thing that I think Jeff Sessions set up. He set up an awful lot of things. So, he really was working. He just wasn't quite strong enough to deliver the blows that needed to happen to end the Mueller witch hunt and everything. He just, he stepped down from that. And because he wasn't strong enough really to do all that he needed to do in that front, that's why Trump needed to bring him Barr. So anyway, this is the document that I told you about. It's on whitehouse.gov, and how China's economic aggression threatens the technologies and intellectual property of the United States and the world. And I will tell you that this was put out June 2018, and it goes through all these different strategies, and it really is amazing what all it says. Now, I want to show you a couple of them in particular. Let's see if I can get the right pages on this. I wrote them down. Let's see if it works this time. So right here it says, in a 2012 study of cyber intrusions, Verizon, in cooperation with 19 contributing private organizations and government agencies, analyzed over 47,000 security incidents that resulted in 621 confirmed data disclosures and at least 44 million compromised records. Wow. And that was from China. Yeah. Lovely, huh? Well, let's go on. If we go on to this next page. In 2013, the cybersecurity firm Mandiant described a People's Liberation Army cyber command, quote, fully institutionalized within the Chinese Communist Party and staffed by more than 100,000 personnel. In May of 2014, the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed criminal charges against 5 officers of the PLA for cyber-enabled economic espionage, among other hacking-related charges related to the theft of intellectual property, trade secrets, and other sensitive business information from U.S. entities in the energy and steel industries. So actually, this has been going on for a while. And even Obama's administration tried to deal with it, but Obama was not good at negotiating things, and so they came up with this agreement. Well, the problem was China didn't abide by the agreement. So now you know why Trump is being so hardlined with China. China is not good at keeping their word, and he knows it. Trump is a really good person to do this kind of negotiating, and I'm so glad that he is doing it, but it needed to be done, and Obama was not strong enough to do it. Okay, let's go on to this next one. And again, we're down here at the bottom, and the CEO of a large multinational telecommunications equipment company recently shared with the Information Technology and Innovation Foundation that he opened up a large R&D facility, that's research and development, facility in Beijing that employs over 500 scientists and engineers. When asked if he did this to access Chinese engineering talent, he responded bluntly, "Unless I promised the Chinese government that I would open up an advanced technology lab there, I was told that I would not be able to sell to the Chinese telecommunications providers." So that's really what they were doing. This is one of their tactics. I mean, this whole document is filled with different tactics that they use. And one of them was, if you want to sell to anyone in China, you're going to have to put your factory here. Well, that was the incentive that got a lot of those big businesses to move over to China. And then, of course, when they're in China, what's China doing? Stealing all the secrets. So, yeah, it just goes on and on. Let me go to this next one here. And we have, look at this. This is what you heard in the clip at the beginning. They're called non-traditional information collectors, and that's how they've been getting a lot of people into the United States. All what they do, and I told you what they did here. I live in a small town, and they came and they said, you know what? We're willing to send you a Chinese teacher. They will teach your students Chinese, and you won't have to pay them 1 red cent. Not a penny. So our French teacher, who had been here for many years, and, you know, he was getting close to retirement, but I think he would have liked to have taught longer. All of a sudden, his French program is out the window, and now they have Chinese. Because they would have had to pay him as a French teacher, but they don't have to pay the Chinese teacher because the Chinese government is paying them. Now, do you think that Chinese teacher is here just to enjoy American life? Oh, I think not. Yeah. So, more than 300,000 Chinese nationals annually attend U.S. universities or find employment at U.S. national laboratories, innovation centers, incubators, and think tanks. That doesn't even count the teachers. Chinese nationals now account for approximately one-third of foreign university and college students in the United States, and about 25% of graduate students specializing in science, technology, engineering, or math, the STEM disciplines. Wow. I mean, this is big. And when you go through and read this, I mean, I just kept going, and it's like, wow, more and more and more. And then there's this one I want to show you, which is on page 17. 17s are always good, right? For example, the 1,000 Talents program, a recruitment program launched in 2008 by this, notice, 2008. Who was in office then? Yeah, well, he didn't get elected until the end of 2008. But the one that was in there in 2008, I'm not surprised. By the central government of China, targets scholars who are leaders in their respective fields with top-level research capabilities and who may hold intellectual property rights, key technologies, or patents in technological fields desired by China. These recruits may receive lucrative and prestigious positions at premier Chinese research institutes, labs, or universities. Oh, like Lieber? Yeah, getting paid $50,000 a month? Chinese government sources claim over 44,000 highly skilled Chinese personnel have returned to China since 2009 through talent programs. As noted by China Daily, which is owned by the Chinese Communist Party, China has more than 300 entrepreneurial parks for students returned from overseas. More than 25,500 enterprises have been set up in the parks by over 67,000 overseas returnees. And what are they returning with? Our intellectual secrets. So this is why we're having such a hard time. It takes a lot of money to put R&D, the research, the development that they have to do to come up with these new types of things, new cell phones or new technology in different ways. It takes money to do the research and to do the development. Well, China doesn't have to pay for that because they're stealing it from us. So that's why they can sell things a whole lot cheaper, because we have to recoup those different expenses, and they don't. And when you go through this, I mean, seriously, guys, you need to read through this, or at least read through the headlines here. They just go through, and it's amazing what they do, what they've been doing. It's crazy because, you know, in China, since it's communist, that the state-owned enterprises, SOEs, are what counts. And so, you know, they're taking these people and they're pretty much making money for the Chinese Communist Party. That's what they're doing. And even the private Chinese companies are guided by the Chinese state. And so, yeah, you need to read through this. It's just, the longer I read, the more I was like, wow, I understand. You know, I really didn't catch it so much when Trump was talking about it. And I thought, yeah, okay, it's kind of a big deal, but is it really that big a deal? But yeah, it is, because they're getting military secrets. And this is, I think, the main reason why the Space Force was created, because China is messing around in space and they're getting technology. If we didn't have our Space Force formed when it was, and it's starting to gear up, and they've got weapons now, they're starting to, you know, create those. If we didn't do that, they would have the power in space to be able to take over our country that way and pretty much rule the world. And I think that's what our entire Space Force is going to be stopping right now, because China's got a lot of power and they have been building on our technology, not just ours. I mean, they're stealing it from everybody. They're finding the best and the brightest and they're bribing them. And, you know, that's how it works. And that's the thing we have to be careful with when we're talking about science and everything. It would be nice to believe that scientists come up with their conclusions because those are true conclusions. But that's not the way it always works. All scientists are reliant on these grants that are out there. And if you don't have these big aha moments, if you can't come up with things, then you're not going to keep getting those grants. And so sometimes our science is not always so accurate because they're depending on those grants. Sometimes they'll do things that'll make them look better in the eyes of whoever is giving them the grant, so it will justify them getting that money. So that's just the thought, you know. And when you're dealing with China, they're doing the same thing. So I'm not saying scientists are greedy, but some of them are. Some of them, they want to do their research, but they need money to do their research. And sometimes they will compromise some things just to be able to do the research they want to do. And I think probably that's what happened with this Lieber guy. I think there have been others that are going over to the Chinese, and, you know, it would be hard to turn down $50,000 a month if you're trying to do research on something. That's quite a bit of money for research. So, you know, or if you're Hunter Biden, it could be plenty for that. And this is just, I've got another clip I want to show you before I go, but I want to just leave you with this thought. When we're talking about the illness that shall not be named, you need to remember that before this came out, what was on the front page? Yeah, the front page, Hunter Biden, Burisma. People were talking about it. It was big. Is it now? When's the last time you heard anyone talking about it? Yeah, well, except maybe me. And so it really has taken a back seat. Everything's taken a back seat. And I don't think that's by chance. I think that's by design. I think the media hype on this whole illness thing is to keep the focus off of the truth, which is the corruption that is becoming very evident if people just open their eyes. Anyway, I'm going to play this last clip, and I just want to say thanks for stopping by, and I'll see y'all later.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to turn my attention to the threat posed by China, and specifically Chinese telecom companies. Senator Rubio spoke earlier, and I agree with what he said about the threat of a rising China, and also the threat of Confucius centers. There's also the threat that telecom companies, specifically Huawei and ZTE, but also Unicom and Telecom, posed to our country. That's why I've introduced legislation with Senator Cornyn and Senator Rubio to say the U.S. government can't use Huawei or ZTE, and that the U.S. government can't use companies that use them. And I'm glad that some companies like Verizon and AT&T, among others, have taken this threat seriously. Could you explain what the risk is that we face from ZTE and Huawei being used in the United States, especially here in this public setting, the risk that companies, state governments, local governments might face if they use Huawei or ZTE products and services?
I think probably the simplest way to put it in this setting would be that we're deeply concerned about the risks of allowing any company or entity that is beholden to foreign governments that don't share our values to gain positions of power inside our telecommunications networks. That provides the capacity to exert pressure or control over our telecommunications infrastructure. It provides the capacity to maliciously modify or steal information, and it provides the capacity to conduct undetected espionage. So at a 100,000-foot level, at least in this setting, those are the kinds of things that worry us. I will say, like you, Senator, we've been gratified, I think, to date by the response of the large U.S. telecommunications providers to our trying to raise awareness on this issue. But I also recognize that the competitive pressures are building. And so it's something that I think we have to be very vigilant about and continue, as you all are doing, to raise awareness about.
Admiral Rogers, would you care to add anything about the threat posed by Huawei?
I would agree with Director Wray's characterization here, and this is a challenge, I think, that's only going to increase, not lessen over time for us.
So you would suggest to mayors, county judges, university presidents, state legislatures to look warily if Huawei or ZTE comes bearing gifts to them?
I would say you need to look long and hard at companies like this.
All the witnesses, I'd like to address this question to you. Will you please raise your hand if you would use products or services from Huawei or ZTE? None of you would. You obviously lead intelligence services, so that's something of a biased question. Raise your hand if you would recommend that private American citizens use Huawei or ZTE products or services. None of you, again, are raising your hand. Thank you for that.